Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on how to detect ACH payroll fraud in real time with machine learning and behavioral analytics. Wendy, Dwayne, and myself will be the speakers for today's session, and we will introduce ourselves. Wendy, please introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, my name is Wendy. I'm a Senior Product Manager at Guardian Analytics.
I'm Eric Tranley, Vice President of Product Management at Guardian Analytics. Some quick housekeeping. Please keep one BrightTalk session browser open, otherwise you may have some echo. You can answer questions in the questions box. You can ask questions in the question box, and we address them either live or by email. This webinar is recorded, and you will receive a URL link to watch it. Please rate and suggest content to improve our webinar series. So what does Guardian Analytics do? We are in the business of protecting our customers from fraud and money laundering. We are leveraging machine learning and behavioral analytics to mitigate fraud risks and rely on the company to stop the sophisticated criminal attacks targeting retail and commercial banking clients. So what is detecting fraud with behavioral analytics? It is about a system that self-learns the individual user behavior, that detects anomalous user activities, that adapts to new threats, and does not depend on rules. We monitor hundreds of events and attributes in real time. What are our achievements? We have today about 450 financial institutions and protect about 40 million accounts, both from the commercial and retail standpoint. We're monitoring 5 billion of activity in terms of transactions per year that make us the #1 leaders in terms of transaction fraud detection. So what is happening in the ACH payroll fraud landscape today? Fraudster will exploit the same-day ACH payroll for fraud activities. Threat of cybercrime against payroll is rising due to the shift of digital payroll solution, which procures a faster payment option. And faster payment initiatives are underway all over the world, will dramatically increase fraud exposure. Now I'm going to hand it over to Wendy to talk about how the fraudster attack the ACH payroll process.
Thank you, Eric. So as we know, the ACH process has a couple of stakeholders in the cycle. There's typically start with the payee as the employee, provide the payer, which is the employer, their direct deposit information. And then once they enrolled, then the employer will start processing the payroll through their ACH batches. And where the point of a compromise for the fraudster is typically from the corporate account perspective, that they will take over to get access to all the payroll information that's stored in the corporate accounts. And then they may manipulate the payroll batches, and then once they're doing so, the next time when employers submit the transactions, ODFI and RDFI processing them, the fraudster can easily redirect the funds to the fraudulent recipients or accounts that they have set up through the account takeover process. So how does ACH fraud detection and batch intervention in real time work at Guardian Analytics? When fraudster impersonates an employee or the payroll controller taking over the corporate account, they can send ACH requests through a variety of channels, online, mobile, or even offline. So when these fraudulent ACH transactions being sent to ACH platform and the details get sent to Guardian Analytics, we risk score every single ACH batch as we receive them. And we apply the risk-based intervention policy as we process these ACH batches, including their transaction details. our application will then utilize the intervention policy to place the suspicious batches on hold, and then at the same time generating the fraud alerts for fraud analysts to review, so that the fraud analysts have the time to investigate the suspicious batches and then their transactions to determine whether this is really a fraud or this is a false alarm. Once the fraud analyst is making that decision based on the investigation results, they can send back the decisioning through our application directly by clicking a button to accept or reject the batch, and Guardian Analytics Risk application will relay that decisioning back to the ACH platform, where the batch can be subsequently processed according to the decision made by the fraud analyst. So let's take a closer look at the payroll fraud process and then detection by looking at how the fraudster may stage the attack and how the Guardian Analytics Risk application can help the analyst to review and investigate. There are some common payroll fraud schemes the fraudster typically utilize. They often submit a brand new fraudulent payroll batch file, or they can change existing recipient's account number to fraudulent account number. They can also add a new fraudulent recipient to a legitimate batch, and then they may do so through the account takeover process of the corporate account, or somehow getting access to even the employee online access to their payroll information. So the process of this batch manipulation typically will start from identity theft. Like I mentioned earlier, the fraudster will take over the corporate account to get access to all the payroll information at the company. And then once they obtain the access, then they may use a number of things, such as adding the fraudulent recipient. The company, which may not be aware that the fraudulent recipients or the payroll batch has been altered, would submit the batch through the ODFI. And when the originator the account being debited, on the other hand, the fraudulent so the fraudster would empty the fraudulent account very quickly to withdraw the funds. And this can all happen within just a matter of number of hours, especially with the same-day ACH now supporting the original debit account happening at the end of the day. So with the rollout of the same-day ACH, financial institution really needs fraud detection very fast. So let's just take a look at how a fraud alert may look like in Guardian Analytics, and how the analysts may use our signals to analyze the situation. And what you see here on the screen is the timeline view of an account, which we have detected number of signals that making this particular batch transaction suspicious. Some of the strong signal can be detected based on the percentage of the new recipient within the batch, or the new recipient information itself. It could also be the batch credit count or amount, the transaction code change or SEC code change. The batch velocity may also tell us something is very different from this batch compared to the established baseline of this account's behavior. And then in this particular example that we found in our real customer data population, this entire batch file contains brand new recipients, making it very suspicious and require the analyst to do further investigation. So in the next slide, I'm going to show you how risk-based policy and a manual intervention can occur within Guardian Analytics application. And instead of just walking you through on the slides, we're going to show you a live demo. So I'm going to share my screen. And as you can see, this is how our application looks like for ACH ODFI fraudulent alerts that the analyst will look at and review. There's a number of information the analyst can review on the screen, including the batch level information such as SEC code, ODFI, the company name and ID. And then there's a number of risk factors related to the fraud analyst that help them to focus on certain area of the investigation. They can also review the batch entry transaction details in the application, and any suspicious activity or information will be flagged for them. So once the analyst conducted their investigation and decide that this particular batch should be either rejected or accepted, they can do so by clicking a button. What you can see here is this particular batch we have in example have a policy status hold, which means because of the risk level assessed by the application, the batch has been put on hold automatically according to the policy set by the customer. The analyst can then use the reject or accept the button to make that decision. So by clicking the reject button, the analyst will be prompted for confirmation of this action. And once they confirm the action, as you can see, the policy status for that batch will be changed to reject. And the message will be sent back to the ACH application to further process this batch. Now let's move back to the slides. So what you see was just demoed in the application where the policy placed suspicious ACH batches in hold status, and we use the accept and reject button to make the decision for the ACH batches. So whenever the fraud analysts conduct investigation, they can use our case manage module to create case and document the process of the investigation and the outcome. The case module would automatically capture key information for them to facilitate the process of documentation. The category, priority, amount at risk, etc. would automatically be documented when they create a case. The analyst can add notes or amend the summary of the case as they move forward within the investigation process. Some of the other things that the fraud team can do is to visualize the risk and the investigation using our fraud analytic product, which is our BI framework that allows the customer to blend their own customer data with the fraud alert and risk data we provide to them. So what we're going to do is to show you a demo of how that may look like if the customer decided to use the fraud analytics. So here is an example of a data dashboard using Tableau to blend the fraud analytic data with customers' own data, such as locations or customer information on originator and recipient. And as you can see, there's a number of graphical representation of the data that can be used and to customers alike. For example, we're using a tree map to visualize the batch risk and the map to lay out the details of the recipient's location, and the customer can choose to filter down the information and by examining the details using this visualization. So if the customer has their own BI tools, then you can slice and dice the data however you want, blend it in with your own data. There's a many flexibility and control you can have once you have the fraud data in your own hand. So I'm switching back to the slides again. And as you can see, we just went through what visualization you can use, an example of it, by using your BI tool such as Tableau. Some of the other things that the customer can utilize the data for case productivity is to look at the alert volume or type of cases that have been opened by the team, and also the workload within the fraud team by looking at how many alerts in what status is being assigned and worked on by the individual team member. This will be helpful for the fraud team to understand their fraud exposure. And to sum it up, Guardian Analytics can stop same-day ACH payment payroll fraud because we provide the monitoring detection for batch manipulation. We can detect change of behavior or deviation from normal activities by looking at unusual new recipient entries or change of percentage of the recipient accounts or the account details. We also allow the customer to monitor, and we provide protection to their corporate account takeover by monitoring any unusual behavior for corporate account login, change of credentials, or unusual ACH batch submissions. The traditional legacy rule-based system will not be able to detect these subtle changes if the fraudster has successfully mimicked the changes within the rules being defined, and then that would also require the rule to be updated frequently as the fraudster evolves their fraud scheme. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Eric.
Thank you, Wendy. So, to learn more about Guardian Analytics, we have a series of webinars on Bright Talk. We are not doing only ACH fraud detection, but also wire fraud detection, online and mobile session transaction fraud detection. You can have a series of those webinars if you are logging into Bright Talk. These are just a selection of them. And with that, we're going to open the Q&A session. So let me go through the various questions we have right now. So the first question is, can you set up a policy that rejects a suspicious transaction but still accept the rest of the batch? Wendy, do you want to take this one?
Sure. There is no technical limitation from Guardian Analytics perspective to support this, but it really depends on if your ACH platform allows you to accept or reject at transaction level instead of batch level. So we can send out the message back to the ACH platform for either accept or reject at both of the levels, but many of the ACH platform may not support rejection or exception at the transaction level.
Thank you, Wendy. There's a second question. Is there a way to prioritize same-day ACH batches?
I'll answer that. The answer is yes. If the ACH platform sends Guardian Analytics a flag for ACH batches that are same day, then we can support the prioritization of the same-day ACH batches by letting the user to create filters or save search. Filters basically allows the analyst to create a criteria where the system will automatically monitoring or compare the alerts being generated against. And if such criteria is being met, the filter will assign the alert to the assignee of the filter. So that if you put same-day ACH flag as part of the criteria of a filter, then the manager can also determine the priority of the filter, and maybe set it to high. Then the analyst can prioritize the workload or the alerts they need to review based on the priority set by the manager.
Thank you, Wendy. So we have a very interesting question on behavior analytics. If behavior analytics relies on the history of an account, how would you detect fraud when you have a brand new account without history? Wendy, you want to take this one?
I'll take this one.
Yeah.
So there's two things we can do to help detect fraud before full history is established. When there is a brand new account coming in, we typically use the behavior of the population to assess the risk because the behavior of the population at a financial institution usually also has its own behavioral fingerprints. So this can help to mitigate some of the risk because of the unknown history of a new account. And on the other hand, we have a number of tools within the application that helps the customer to utilize policy or filters to prioritize the new accounts. So they can set up a criteria to search and monitor new accounts. We believe that human scrutiny can help to mitigate the risk until the machine can pick up and perform when the history is established.
Thank you, Wendy. We have a question on ACH processors. So what ACH processors does this interface with?
We do have a number of ACH processors, platforms that we have turnkey integration with. I think we're more than happy to follow up this question because it's going to be hard for us to recite all the names live here, but we're more than happy to follow up with email.
Yeah, please email us this question. We're going to reply to you so that we can have a more tailored answers. But we do have a series of ACH processors that are interconnected with us out of the box. So, okay. So with that, since we don't have any more questions, this will end this webinar on ACH fraud detection in real time. Thank you for your attendance.